Welcome everybody to the Christian Marauders live stream, pre-recorded that is. I'll tell you why a little bit later, but today we're going to tackle some of the current issues that are affecting us today in the world and try to make sense out of what we're seeing. We're going to go in a very strange direction, but what else can you expect on a show like this than to go into the strange and the bizarre that helps to explain what's happening in the present. So with that, we're going to look at some major headlines out there, folks. Let me bring them up online and right now. So just look at your screen here. Here we go from the Beef magazine here. As you can see, the beefmagazine.com, where it says here, build back better without beef. Build back better without beef. How you like that? Here, this by Amanda Radke talks about Joe Biden, talking about the Great Reset promises to build back better by reinventing capitalism and solving climate change through reduced beef consumption. How do you like that, folks? And you also have, believe it or not, you have this guy named Bill Gates. It says here at MIT Technology, technologyreview.com, and this is all protected under Article 107 of the copyright here for educational purposes. And it says Bill Gates says rich nations should shift entirely to synthetic beef. Yummy. What Bill Gates goes on to say in his articles here and stuff, and what he wants to do, folks, is amazing. He wants to eliminate greenhouse gas emissions that are driving climate change. How? By eliminating meat, because it takes a lot of plant-based products to feed cows and chickens and poultries and pigs and meat. Well, how we get our meat from animals. It takes a lot of stuff to feed them critters, you know. And so then you chop them up, put them on the breakfast table, and then you run the risk of heart disease because of that. So he has a great idea how to solve the problem is to make synthetic meat. And so he wants to create a place where you can solve the climate crisis. How? By getting rid of the animals and not feeding them so much so you don't need as many of them, and have everybody switch to plant-based meat products and synthetic meat that is literally grown from the muscle tissue from a Petri dish, which has been successfully done. You take tissue samples of meat from a steak, and you can grow that steak in a Petri dish into other steaks. In order to get it look like meat, you take a 3D printer in a machine, and that will produce the colors that are needed to make the mystery meat look like meat that's grown out of the Petri dish. And they mix it with plant-based products. Yum, yum, yum. And some DNA modification with that. And yum, 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 yum. Boy, I'm telling you, you just dig into a steak right now. Boy, I tell you, it makes you real hungry, doesn't it? So now, if you don't believe me on that, here is the World Economic Forum on public domain here. It says this 3D printed steak could help us reduce meat consumption. And it goes on to explain how here. It says every year billions of animals are raised and slaughtered for food. This uses a huge amount of energy and energy to feed them. And basically it goes on and tells you the number slaughtered to the world. Okay, you can save the animals here, but you got to kill the animals anyway because they eat too much, they pass too much methane, and so you got to have a cow, pig, animal genocide. But don't worry, you can still have your synthetic meat. It says we got to save people's lives because they're too stupid, because guess what? Heart attacks and stuff are from eating meat, as you can see in the article. And so here's a picture here. It says scientists in Israel are creating plant-based meat that has fat, blood, and muscle. That's from what I'm talking about there, where they put the meat in the Petri dish and grow it. Doesn't that look yummy? Boy, I tell you, that just looks really, really yummy there. You know, I don't think the sound is on, but there you see it on there, and you can see it. Wow. They make this mystery meat. Doesn't that look delicious, folks? Mimicking the structure of an entire cow. The steaks are created by powerful 3D printers, printing different layers to replicate real meat. We analyze the different components that make those beautiful cuts. Yum, yum. And try to figure out which are the key components that are needed to mimic in order to achieve those beautiful cuts of meat. We identified 3 main components of muscle, blood, and fat. Yum! These are the components that we need to mimic in order to reach the perfect, beautiful steak. The machines can currently print up to 6 kilograms of meat an hour, but the aim is to make the equivalent of meat from 1 cow every day. The company plans to test the steaks in restaurants later this year. Boy, wow! Before introducing industrial-scale 3D printers to meat distributors, our technology can create whole muscle cut of meat, just as a cow can produce that in much a more efficient way, and the lower cost, and of course it's much better for the environment. It's hoped to use this technology to create realistic meat could help with global food shortages while lowering greenhouse emissions produced by cattle. Boy, those cattle. There is a long way to go before high-tech alternative meat is printed, producing enough to help create a completely whole new food system for the future. Boy, doesn't that make you go out and you want to go out and get something to eat? So here's another article that you see on your screen called The Great Reset by RT Questions and More. There's a picture of this crazy guy named Klaus Schwab there. And I'm going to go down here and look at what his points are. He points these out of the Great Reset is. You'll own nothing and be happy about it. We'll rent everything we need and it'll be delivered by drone. And this means we won't even own our ability to sell our labor, okay? You just basically just exist and the world's elite feeds you fake meat, okay? The U.S. won't be the only leading power. The plan of the Great Reset is to destroy the United States as the world's power in order to implement a supra-capitalism and communism mix, okay? Klaus Schwab goes and says, we won't die waiting for an organ donor. So the idea here is to use DNA technology and make chimeras with human body parts in it and use them. In other words, you mix one species DNA with another, and they're doing that. They're also implementing AI technology for the same purposes, to make a more better human being. And it says here, number 4, we will eat less meat. Meat will become an occasional treat, not a staple. We'll eat less because it's good for the environment and our health. This is like a choice offered by a state telecommunications monopolies. I mean, this guy is a great commentary. I suggest you look at RT.com on the Great Reset here. It is pretty tongue-in-cheek here. Western values will have been tested to the breaking point. That is what Klaus Schwab goes on to say. And he talks about building back better, a great reset. Wow. So that's what we're talking about. Now go ahead and look at this here too. I just said all this for this recent headline that here it says, this is out of CBS News, the Christian Broadcasting Network, I think. And this is, again, protected by 107. This is for educational purposes. It says JBS, the world's largest meat supplier, was recently hit by a cyber attack. And the Biden administration is saying this was caused by Russia. However, if we look over to June 2nd here, from Newsmax article here, says the largest meat producer says vast majority of plants back online after a cyber attack. Hallelujah. And it says the world's largest meat processing company is getting back online after production around the world was disrupted by a cyber attack just weeks after similar incidents shut down a U.S. pipeline. Boy, I got a question here, folks. And this is a question I would like to ask because I learned to think out of the box. Do you think by chance, just by chance, the mystery meat people maybe they're looking at Russia, but maybe you should look at the World Economic Forum, who has a vested economic interest in this. Maybe they are behind the cyber attack as a successful ploy, a test possibly for a future event, for future planned food shortages in order to save the planet from global warming and evil human beings, especially if you're of a certain race or color, and that their loving kindness is so loving that you own nothing and be happy about it. And they'll give you a little steak, real meat once in a while if you turn in a conservative or Christian. And, you'll get a perk, just like they did in things like that in the former Soviet Union and still do in communist China, and they still do in communist North Korea and in Cuba as well. And every communist, Marxist, socialist state, they do this. I mean, this is getting to be pretty crazy, don't you think? Do you think this planned meat shortage is preparing for something in the shape of things to come? The shape of things to come? Do you just might think that? Before you just want to write me off as a conspiracy theorist and other, I want to show you prior documentation written in 2009 and 2010 again. This time I'm going to put it on a screen with my software, since I'm not doing this as an actual live stream, but pre-record it so I can do this without doing the bandwidth issue and dragging and stuff. So if you look here, I'm going to go to the screen I'm pulling up the scenarios for future of technology and international development. This, again, the link for this article is in the description page. So I'm going to go through this and I'm going to show you their plan. Everything's laid out in this plan. There are scenarios for future technology international development. The idea here is to use scenarios to plan for the future and how to solve problems in order to get to a particular goal. So I'm going to scroll down to page 9 here. So bear with me as I scroll down to page 9. It says, and I have it all highlighted, it says, report builds on the Rockefeller Foundation growing body of work, which is the emerging field of FORESIGHT in 2009. Okay, I'm going to go back and show you that plan in a minute. That's very important. But it says here, over here, if you see my cursor right here, it says scenario planning is a methodology designed to help guide groups and individuals through exactly this creative process. The process begins by identifying forces of change in the world and combining those forces in different ways to create a set of diverse stories or scenarios about how the future can evolve. Okay, it goes on. And it says here, rather, they are thoughtful hypotheses that allows us to imagine and then to rehearse different strategies on how to be more prepared for the future, or more ambitiously, how to help shape a better future for ourselves. Oh man, how you like that? Boy, I tell you, they're really looking out for our best interest at heart, don't you think? And it says here on page 10, the scenarios shared in this report explore 4 such contexts. Each within you'll see suggests very different landscapes for technology and its potential impacts on the developing world. Finally, note about what we mean by technology. In this report, we use the term to refer to a broad spectrum of tools and methods of organizations. Tools for basic survival. It goes on and talks about basically how to track and monitor those. In other words, you use each one of these major crises in order to create technology to monitor and track every citizen of the world of what they eat and consume. So basically, you'll be controlled by autocratic bureaucrats who bean count how many calories you eat, what you can buy, what you can sell. You'll own nothing, and you will certainly be happy about it, because if not, they will get rid of you. So with that, I'm looking at page 16. Here we have the 4 chapters we'll be looking at real briefly here. This is how they plan to arrive at a better future world where they can track and monitor everybody through implementing crisis, playing both sides at once, everything like this is their scenario. This is what they are designed to do. Lockstep. They want to create a world of tighter top-down governmental control and more authoritarian leadership, with limited innovation and a growing citizen pushback. Why do they want to do that? They want top-down control in order to find out who are the resistors, who resist this, so they can mark, track them, and get rid of those who resist, because they want an authoritarian leadership for this. And they'll implement this by being clever together. And it says, a world in which highly coordinated, successful strategies emerge from addressing both urgent and entrenched worldwide issues, which are, according to that chapter, global warming and healthcare, universal healthcare, that is. The next step is called hack attack. And it says, an economically unstable, shock-prone world in which governments weaken, criminals thrive, and dangerous innovations emerge. So the whole thing is, and hack attack is to break the system in pieces. After everything is destroyed, you get back and you solve the world's problems. You build it back better. You got that right. So as you can see in Lockstep, this is chapter Lockstep on page 18. So now we have here talking about using some type of crisis here, and you can fill in the blanks here. And what the purpose of it here in Lockstep, as it says, is a world of tighter top-down governmental control and more authoritarian leadership with limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. They want to create citizen pushback and see who is going to push back so they can track and monitor you for a future development. Scroll down to page 23. This is the technology, because it's all about developing technology. And it says, scenario narratives point to areas where conditions may enable or accelerate development of certain kinds of technologies. Okay? It says, technology innovation in Lockstep is largely driven by government and is focused on issues of national security, health, and safety. Okay? Most technological improvements are created and for developed countries shaped by government's dual desire to control and monitor its citizens. So this is from the Rockefeller, the benevolent, kind, ever-loving hug the tree planet, save you, save everybody. This philanthropic organization here has your best interest at heart. And if you look down here, I scrolled it up a bit, it says, driven by protectionism and national security concerns, nations create their own independent, regionally defined IT networks, mimicking the most favored countries' firewalls. Governments have various degrees of success in policing internet traffic, but these efforts nevertheless fracture the World Wide Web. Have you seen any of that lately, folks? And so I'm going to scroll down to the next chapter here. Just bear with me as you... Here's the next chapter. And it says, in a world, highly coordinated and successful strategies emerge for addressing both urgent and entrenched issues. Okay? And it talks about climate change. Carbon dioxide levels are climbing, and you got to do something because we're all going to die with climate change. We're going to kill ourselves. We're producing too much carbon. And so it goes on here. And it says centralized global oversight and governance structure sprang up not just for energy use, but for disease and technology standards. Nation states lost some of their power and importance as global architecture strengthened and regional government structures emerged. International oversight entities like the United Nations took on new levels of authority, as did regional systems. So here's the whole, and the sole purpose of this plan was to collapse the economy. So you have a major event in lockstep that causes this push to solve global warming. And the whole idea as you go in this plan was to collapse the economic engine of the world, which is the United States, as well as the Western world, collapse it so you will no longer have anything to do with a free market system, not a pure capitalist system. We don't. They're lying to you. We have a free market where we are supposed to break up these corporate monopolies so they don't have too much power that influences government entities to do such things as you're seeing now. So they're destined to play both sides, collapse the system, and bring about this by the events described in lockstep and now by climate change. So right after the lockstep stuff is happening, you'll see a push for this type of carbon emissions, Green New Deal stuff in proliferation, as well as providing health care for everybody, universal health care. So that's pretty much it on that stage here. So you go down here, headlines in Clever together on their timeline here. First, U.S. solar power, cheaper than coal. Yeah, it really hasn't happened yet, but that's what they were going for. Look at this. Consortium of foundations launches third green revolution as food shortages loom by the year 2027. Wow. Boy, these people are really looking out for our good here. You go down to this technology and development. We have flexible, rapid mobile payment systems drive a dynamic economy. All that's talking about here, and I have my notes down here, is just simply saying they want to go to a one world currency, a one world digital economic system. Okay? Now here we have Hack Attack. It says an economically unstable and shock-prone world in which governments weaken, criminals thrive, and dangerous innovations emerge. You got to understand, all of these are looking for opponents who oppose the system that they want to create. So through crisis, you identify the reactionary forces and you mark them, tag them, and eliminate them. How? By digital currency, folks. You control their money, what they can eat, so forth, etc. You can control the population, control their health care, all that. You can control the population. Okay? Control the education system. You can control the population. It's about controlling you. So here it says the years 2010 to 2020 were dubbed the doom decade for a reason. Not surprising, this opening series of deadly anachronous catastrophes put enormous pressures on overstressed global economy and had entered the decade still in recessions. Efforts cost vast sums of money, but the primary sources from aid agencies to developed world governments had run out of funds. Most nation states could no longer afford their locked-in costs, let alone respond to increased citizens' demand for more security, more health care, more social programs, more infrastructure repair. Didn't we just pass a big infrastructure repair thing that only has very little to do with infrastructure? Oh, well, I digress. goes on and talks about here. This is describing events they want to do. This is a scenario. Now people look, this is just talking about that. It's not talking about what you're talking about. This is a scenario. It does, folks. It sets a template, a pattern to look for here. Look at here, these dire circumstances force tough trade-offs. In 2015, the U.S. relocated a large share of its defense spending to domestic concerns, pulling out of Afghanistan, where the resurgent Taliban seized power once again. We had a new administration come in. We have this guy named Austin Lloyd, who wants to plan for, guess what, folks? Guess what? Guess what he wants to purge? He's looking for domestic terrorists. Trump supporters, 75 million people are targeted as insurgents and insurrectionists we got to get rid of. They are the greatest threat. These people are white supremacists. These people are evil, and we must crush them, says Austin Lloyd. I'm just paraphrasing his mindset for you to try to get the idea of what this guy's saying. So you have here in this plan, this ideology to reallocate resources of our military to domestic concerns. Are we seeing that by chance? They were trying to do this, okay, but it didn't quite work. They were planning on it probably, so at some future date they were. And guess what? This current administration is pulling out of Afghanistan. Taliban's going to come back. Guess what? We're seeing it played out. You need to pay attention to some of this stuff because I don't know what else is going to grab your attention to wake up. Let's go back to this plan here. And in Hack Attack, I want to go to page 35. Okay, look here at the last paragraph. It says, more nation states lost control of their public financiers along with the capacity to help their citizens and retain stability and order. Severe economic and climate stresses push many alliances and partnerships to the breaking point. I'm just reading the yellow highlighted areas, folks. In the face of global food and resource shortages, again, food shortages, to reduce exports of agriculture by other commodities, okay? With government power weakened, order rapidly disintegrated, and safety nets evaporated, violence and crime grew more rampant. Wow. Then it talks about countries with ethnic, religious, and class divisions saw a sharp spikes in hostility. Meanwhile, overtaxed militaries and police forces could do little to stop from growing communities of criminals and terrorists from gaining power. Technology-enabled gangs and network criminal enterprises exploited both the weakness of states and desperation of individuals with increasing ease through global guerrillas. In other words, they go on. Criminal networks also grew highly skilled in counterfeiting illicit goods through reverse engineering, either within countries or global bodies like the World Health Organization, okay? And page 36 is technology hackers were also hard at work. Internet scams did that. They hacked into government systems, bank and phishing scams. Databases were basically, they're talking about being hacked into. This Wild West environment had a profound impact on innovation. The threat of being hacked in the presence of so many thefts and fakes lowered incentives to create a me first rather than a me too technologies. Okay, so they're identifying some problems, but you create a crisis through releasing of criminal activity into the world. You cyber attack things to collapse the system, overstress everybody, and put it to a breaking point is what they're saying. And so, interesting, not all the hacking was bad. Genetically modified crops and do-it-yourself biotech became backyard garage activities and stuff like that. So they're going to push backyard technologies like Bill Gates. It's mystery meat to solve global issues and GMO modifications. Are we seeing that right now? And this is the scary part of what this is about. The whole thing of this scenario plan is to increase criminal activity, attack the population, make them scared. Crime increases exponentially. Hacking attempts hack into systems, bringing oil and gas pipelines to a shut, meat products and meat stuff coming to a shortage. All this designed for this purpose here. Those who couldn't buy their way out of chaos, which was most people, retreated to whatever safety they could find. With opportunity frozen and global mobility at a near standstill, no place wanted more people, especially more poor people. It was often a retreat to the familiar family ties, religious beliefs, or even national allegiances. Trust was afforded to those who guaranteed safety and survival. Whether it was a warlord or an evangelistic preacher or a mother, or some places, the collapse of state capacity led to resurgence of feudalism. In other areas, people managed to create more resilient communities operating as isolated micro versions of formerly large-scale systems. The weakening of national governments also enabled grassroots movements to form and grow, creating rays of hope amid bleakness. By 2030, the distinction between developed and developing nations no longer seem particularly descriptive or relevant. That last sentence is where they want to go in the 2030 agenda. Everybody is reduced to a state of equity, equally poor, equally miserable, equally third world, with a ruling elite, these people who created these plans, ruling on top, who control your finances and control everything and what type of food you eat. Aren't they nice? Now, as we turn to page 38 here, as you see, as I scroll up the screen here, folks, look at the headlines in Hack Attack. This follows a template of what to expect, and I'll try to explain it. I highlighted some of the areas. Next thing you're going to see is a stressing of violence against minority and immigrants spikes across a certain country. Okay, they picked Asia here, for example, but it's not Asia they're talking about. They're talking about countries. They want to use this as a template, as a scenario plan. So they camouflage their languages by disguising the countries they want to attack. Violence against minorities and immigrants spikes across Asia. So recently we have this surge against Asian migrants that happened in the United States. I don't know. I mean, most of the stuff is happening in Democrat-controlled states and cities, and where they're burning down things. So you go figure. Islamic terror networks thrive in Latin America. So you have these terror networks already proven, already happening back in Obama's administration, on up through former administration, stopped it. Now the borders are open again, and so this is back on the table. Islamic terror networks thrive in Latin America, so the borders are open. Do you know that Border Patrol agents have, I don't know how many people from terrorist countries are now entering into this country? So I'm going to scroll down to the next point here. Smart scramble. Very important. It says, an economically depressed world in which individuals and communities develop localized makeshift solutions to a growing set of problems. Okay? Now I want you to look here. The combined private and public debt burden hanging over the developed world continue to depress economic activity both here and in developing countries with economic dependent on exporting formally from rich markets. Without the ability to boost economic activity, many countries saw their debts deepen and civil unrest and crime rates climb. Sounds like today's headlines. The United States, too, lost much of its presence and credibility on the international stage due to deepening debt, debilitating markets, and a distractive government. This, in turn, led to the fracturing or decoupling of many international collaborations started by relying on the United States' continued strength. This is all about breaking the economic engine of the world, the United States, so all the nations of the world, I'm paraphrasing what this means, smart scramble together in order to create a altruistic, globalist run, do it for your neighbor, utopic, communist mindset. That's exactly what it's about. That's what they want to do. As we go to concluding thoughts in Scenario Plan 2010 from the Rockefeller Foundation, and it says this: as you have seen, each of the scenarios, if it were to unfold, would call for different strategies and have different implications on how a range of organizations will work and relate to changes in technology. But no matter what world might emerge, there are real choices to be made about what areas and goals to address and how to drive success toward particular objectives. This is very important here. So look down at the yellow highlighted areas. The first link between technology and governance is critical to consider in a better understanding of how technology could be developed and deployed. Again, this whole scenario plan is about developing technologies in order to have a top-down government type of control with an altruistic world elite governing everything. You own nothing. You'll be happy about it. You learned your lesson. If you obey, everything will be better because we know best for you. That's the idea here, folks. Let's go back and look at the next concluding thought here. about the scenario plan. It says a second reoccurring theme in the scenarios is that development work will require different levels of intervention, possibly simultaneously. In some scenarios, philanthropic organizations and other actors in development face a set of obstacles in working with large institutions, but may face a yet unfolding set of opportunities to work with non-traditional partners, even individuals. The organizations that is able to navigate between these levels and actors may be best positioned to drive success. I'll translate that in a second here. A third theme highlights the potential value of scenarios of one critical element of strategy development. These narratives serve to kickstart the idea of generation process, build the future-oriented mindset of participants, provide guide for ongoing trend monitoring and horizon scanning activities. They offer a useful framework that can help tracking and making sense of early indicators and milestones that might signal the way in which the world is actually transforming. So let me translate all this. Let's go back to this theme here, where it talks about large institutions, governing institutions, educational institutions, industry, and high finance all need to be brought under submission. This was 2010. Their plan was to bring these into a world globalist groupthink of partners. Started with the World Economic Forum. It grew in popularity. Now we have woke companies for a reason. Put two and two together, folks. It begins to make sense here, especially when I go and explore the next plan here and show you what they're planning. With that, I want to go to another scenario plan. It's the 2009 one that is stated that this builds off the 2009 plan. And the 2009 plan, it blew me away when I looked at it. So with that, we're going to look at it real quick. Bring it up here. So now we're looking at the front page of the Institute for Alternative Futures, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the Bellagio Center, Bellagio, Italy. This is all in public domain. It's accessible. It's called Scenarios for Smart Globalization. That's what it is. If you look at the picture here, and you know anything about occult symbolism, you see occult symbols. I see it here with a 12-pointed star, 2 cubes, teacups, 9 people. I see here the sun to the east, looking to a new, better, brighter future. And here's the slogan: for the many and not the few, for the rich and poor, for a smarter world. Basically, this is about pro-poor development, accelerating and enhancing pro-poor development opportunities. So what does that mean? Accelerating pro-poor development. That means you look at what they call the economic south, which is all poor countries, all third world countries and second world countries, and how to raise them up. So in this scenario plan, it's all about providing health care for all these people who produce large families. The idea here is you got a large family, and your family is huge because you need it for agricultural purposes. Now, if we give you health benefits for your kids and we implement a stringent population control through abortion, whatever, family planning, you can reduce the amount of kids because we'll keep your kids alive. So you might need just 2 kids to work your farm instead of 9, because you have 9 and 5 of them die of disease. Well, you know, you can run a farm with 2 or 3 kids, and thus you reduce the effect on the climate change, because you guys build fires, and we want to solve that problem too, because we're looking out for your best interest. So this is what this is about: developing poor countries and turning them into globalist, utopic, world communist, Marxist, utopic ideas. So with that, let's look at some of this plan and look at the occult symbolism that's prevalent in this. I'm going to tell you, it is profound. If you know anything about the occult, and you've been in the New Age movement or involved in the occult, and you're a Christian now, pay attention to the symbols, and you can take off on this and explore this on your own. But let's look at it. So next on pages 10 and 11 here, you have these nice little diagrams. It says here, smart globalization requires putting together pieces as a joint effort on a global scale. Collectivism, that's the idea, moving the world into a collective mindset. How do you do that in poor countries? How do you do it with these poor countries? Well, you have the climate crunch. You want to save and threaten these people with climate change. Then you want to stress out their economy, like I said in the last scenario. Why do you want to increase national debt? You do that to monetize the debt, to bring down the economic system, to bring all under a digital currency and redistribute it worldwide, so everybody has a universal income, maybe of $400 or $500 a month, maybe $1,000, but where you own nothing and you're going to be happy about it. Now the poor people still have to grow the food, so we're going to make them happy and reduce the world's population, and by fixing all this stuff, and they have the best health care, so forth, etc. Yeah, they got it all figured out. But notice the symbol here of people dying in the credit crunch. That part they don't want you to know about. On page 14 here, you see something, an amazing thing, and I am going to pump it up a little. Whoops, that's a little too much. Let me go back to, there we are. I want to look at this picture here. This is a telling picture. If you understand symbolism in the occult world, you'll see this. And I am absolutely convinced that Luciferians are behind the Rockefeller Foundation. It's already been reported in many cases, but now here you have positive proof of these people. I'll show you they laid it out openly in this. Number one, you have a 12-pointed star here. 12-pointed star. A 12-pointed star represents in the occult world, I'm getting off of Lucius Trust, Alice Bailey thing, as well as other occult symbols about the 12-pointed star, is about divine wholeness, where everybody works together with the same concept, working together in integrity to bring about a brave new world. Okay? And you have 9 people. 9 in the Chaldean numerology, which they are using, and I'll prove that in a minute, here represents a sacred occult number. It means it's the thing of bringing unity and wholeness and building it all together. You also have these 9 people. You have 2 squares here. These are magic squares. I'll talk about magic squares in a minute. You also have 3 teacups and a teapot, which is a takeoff of the book of Revelations about people drinking from the cup of the whore of Babylon, or the prostitute of Babylon, the cup of her filthiness. That's what that represents. Now, if you look over to the right, you'll see right here, you have 1 magic square pointing to the east. That would be east. This would be south. This is about pro-poor development in the south. From the east, looking to a brighter horizon for new hope, bringing everybody into a global integrity, unity, into a collective mindset. You have a person over here looking at a table. Why? Why is that? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How many of you ever know what that is? That is a spread of an 8-card tarot deck. Okay? And you have a person here with a blue tinge on their back, which is being in communication with the divine. And so you have a blue tinge here in communication with the divine. Over here, on this side of the rows, this is the pro-poor world. Over here is the Western world. You have a church. You have old ideas and old religions with this pagoda type thing and these pillars here, these obelisks. And you have more open-minded spirituality over here, and you have some over here, but it's all in corporate monopolies, these big buildings. And this is another religious symbol over Eastern Orthodox religion. You have the church, and you have this, and this blue truck. I won't get into all the symbolism really, but you have a street there called Straight. I won't get into all that, what that means in the occult. But here you want to blend this with that to make a brave new world through this occult symbolism of 12-pointed star, bringing wholeness and divine unity, working together with the same integrity and goal. In other words, you walk lockstep one another to bring this about. You're guided by higher spiritual entities. You're using the tarot system here. This is what this is telling me, and I will prove it. Just hold on here, folks. I'm not kidding. With that, I just turned over to the next page. Just look at it. Let me boost it, get a little higher resolution here so you can kind of see what this looks like. Here you have this interesting picture in the Rockefeller Foundation of this interesting green background, some hills. Guys look like they're wearing Chinese military uniforms, pulling the strings with this all-seeing eye, overlooking a town with swirls of chaos and blues for spiritual enlightenment and stuff. with this gray area, meaning in order to bring about this new world order, it's going to create a lot of chaos, and you need a high military presence of some strong entity like a communist country in order to bring it about. So the world's elites can watch over everything you do. Why in the world, if this is not an occultic Luciferian type of organization with these type of people in it, why would they use such a gross, evil, sinister looking picture in that? So we go down here. It says the workshop participants viewed the foresight as a tool for rich and poor alike to see beyond local boundaries and limitations or boundaries of our local valleys. In other words, they want to bring everybody into a one world government mindset. That's on page 17. Now I'm going to move this over because I got it zoomed in here a little bit. So we go over here and you look at this section here and you have this. Foresight in the form of anticipatory governance is therefore survival tools by means of which we as individuals, communities, and species can escape the bounds of present circumstances and achieve measures of freedom of choice about our destinies. In other words, what they're saying here, you need the them to shape your destiny, because everything that God's creative order is evil. Believing in yourself, believing in your country is evil. All that is evil. So you need to come under a one world utopic mindset with the all-seeing eye governing you. Okay? Just think about what the all-seeing eye represents. I mean, this is frightening. So I want to go to page 22 and 23. It's pro-poor foresight, energy, climate change, science, technology, economic governance. What all this is about is building a surveillance system to watch everything. Just keep following me. And I'm going to zoom this in a little bit further so you can read it a little bit better here. I'm going to scroll over to page 23, I mean. Additionally, these forecasts assume little improvement in the desperate state of energy poverty for the poorest people in the developing world. It goes on with a lot of stuff. And here it talks about women and children are often responsible for fuel collection. Okay, you have to collect firewood, collection of fuel, firewood. It limits educational work opportunities for children and women. In other words, you can't get them into the government-run schools to brainwash them with critical race theory and everything else they need to know to destroy the system. But you want to make their lives more easy, more luxurious, so they can, for themselves, so they stop using firewood, because using firewood produces smoke, and that is a carbon emissions, and you can save the planet, save the world by reducing that. So how do you do that? It says microfinance institutions allow households and villages to mobilize capital needed to make small energy investments such as clean stoves. Okay. I want to talk about clean stoves. It doesn't say this in this report, but in another report and another documentary that they did, folks, as you look on the screen, is this. This is what they were talking about. A clean stove would be a solar power stove to give to places like in India or Indonesia where they have long monsoon season where the sun doesn't shine, but you give them a solar stove that'll heat up their food so they can cook using solar energy. Or you have solar energy, solar batteries, or wind power, or whatever. Some of these places the wind don't blow. So, these people really know what they're talking about, and they're so smart that they don't think that you can't give solar ovens. They're not going to work well where there's a monsoon season and where it's cloudy most of the time and it rains. It just ain't going to work. Sorry. And so they're trying to get rid of the use of fuel in order to save the planet by having clean stoves. Or they are even talking about, let's get rid of the fossil fuels. Let's have natural gas for them, but not for us. But they can use it for their thing, and we create a whole new economy where they can buy the fuel from the company globalist store, and they can market them and profit off of them by selling them clean energy. Okay, I'm just paraphrasing what these clean stoves are about through some of their own scenario plans, as well as some of the other documents and other things that you see on YouTube by the World Economic Forum about the same subject. The UN talks about this. It's just too much to go into right now in the time limit we have. But that's what they want to do. And then they go on talking about the health care of kids. In order to reduce the population, increase the health care of kids so you don't need 9 kids, 10 kids, or 15 kid families in order to run the farm anymore because you have a high death rate. You solve the death rate, keep a few alive for the farm, and they're predestined forever and ever. That family is to farm for the rich world's elites to eat off of. Even meat. for them, but not for you. Okay, so that's the kind of the idea with this insidious plan. Now, this is the unzoomed version of pages 26 and 27. This is a remarkable thing. Like I said, I'm going to zoom this in here so you can look at it. Section, let me run it over to page 27 here. So pro-poor development is basically they want to set up, I'm paraphrasing here for time's sake, set up internet systems worldwide, get them out worldwide, set up an internet system like they designed in 2010 scenario plan for the entire world in order for digital shared intelligence. That's what that is about. Now, if you look at the bottom left-hand part of the screen there, it says, workshop participants talked at length about how the potential of networks to connect innovators and foresight practitioners. In other words, you want to get the internet super capability to monitor all the poor people of the world, what they use for, cook their food, how many have solar panel ovens, how many have clean stoves, and all this. You want to be able to control and track every citizen in the poor countries for their own good. And so I want to scroll over to page here, interesting, page 26. And here you got a spin-off. Let me shrink it down so you can see it a little better. A very interesting thing here. This is a board. It's pretty interesting. Isn't it pretty cool looking here? You see this board. Looks like Chutes and Ladder. But if you know occult symbolism and stuff here, you know that that is a magic square. I'll talk about a magic square in a second. And each one of these things you see here, corporate finances, industrial, are on certain magic squares, which contain numbers. And the numbers that these are on in the magic square match what is going on that you see here in the book. Also match what the dice are saying, the numbers on the dice. This is pure occultism, where the snake's heads are land on certain numbers, where the ladders slide into, all begin to make sense here. So hold on, folks. Let me explain this. So I'm going to Wikipedia now. And it's called magic squares, and they have these squares with certain numbers, and they all add up certain things. I won't get into everything about a magic square, but if you know anything about the occult, anything like that, you will understand what magic squares are about. I won't get into all that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down here so you can see that there's different types of magic squares. Each of them one has 3, and their number is 15. Whoops. And you have different planets, okay, here. And so you scroll down and notice that the magic square that's used in the 2009 scenario plan there has 7 squares across. This is for Venus. Some of you are already shaking your head going, wow, I understand exactly what that means. And all one of these numbers going up or down, it equals 175. I'm not going to waste my time explaining that, but this just want you to show you from Wikipedia, this is used to indicate Venus. With that, let's look back at the screen. You have the 7 and 7 thing. You have these on certain number things. I'll tell you what it means in a second here. So you have the dice. I want to look at the dice here. You have 5, 3, 8. You have 1, 7, and you have 4 and 2. So you look at those numbers, and these have meaning in occult numerology or Chaldean numerology. Okay, so 5 and 3 means having a voice in creating activity. When you have 8, means to create divine balance. So here, since this is Venus's square, this is Aphrodite's square, this is Ishtar's square, this is Azeroth's square. This goes back to the ancient Mesopotamian gods. This is the entity seen in the book of Babylon, known as the Whore of Babylon, folks. So this is the Whore of Babylon's magic square to produce something. That 12-pointed star wanted to bring harmony and balance into the world. This is what this entity is doing. And so they are invoking Ishtar in order to do this with this magic square. So 5 means something, 3 means something. Add those together, it equals 8. That means something. So that means giving a voice. It means activity. It's 5 and 3, and 8 means create a divine balance. 4 and 2 means 4 means to bring in forth unity, and 2 in order to overcome problems and obstacles. So again, number 1 over here, you have 1 and 6 there is a divine purpose, a leader. It is the male yang symbol. It's the noble symbol that brings law, peace, and order and civility. It's leadership or leaders that bring this about. And number 6 is the teacher of our healer of the divine path. Okay? And then you have over here 4 and 2, again, right there. And we go over this again so you can get is what it means. 4 and 2, 4 means law, order, it means overcoming by using law and order. Number 2 is the feminine of the yin symbol. It's the dark, sinister side to bring chaos into the world to produce change. It means redefine truth of what is true and false in order to achieve the divine path. So you have the yin and yang symbol in this, and this divine mumbo jumbo of the occult world. They know what they're looking at. They designed it this way. And inside each one of these things are numbers, and these numbers have meaning. And I'm not going to go through all the meanings of what they mean, but it's pretty intense. So this is Venus's magic square. And so this is on the 22nd number. Oversight's on number 30. 38 is entrepreneurs. Over here are your farmers, number 46. Corporations are on the 29th number. The location of industrial capacities on the 37th number. This is on the 27th number of this education department. You have R&D funding and overseas aid. That is on, I think, the 24th square, I think. Yeah. And this new ideas is on the 11th square. So all these numbers have meaning in ancient Chaldean numerology. And I find, why do I know that? Because I looked up the number that this falls on the magic square. And so that number talks about giving aid, helping, and producing the divine path. This number 11 is a warning type of number. New ideas can create chaos. Since this is the Ishtar who creates chaos, the female side of the dark side of the yin-yang symbol, so the new ideas can create chaos, and you need funding for the chaos in order to survive it. So I want to give you, just with the pictures here on screen, what these numbers mean as short a possible time as I can imagine without going through a bunch of numbers. So what it's all about is bringing the corporate world and the government world are on these two numbers that represent warnings that, things can go either way, but you need to bring governments in line. So you have a government institution to come in line with this ladder to fund overseas aid with corporate finance, banking system, so forth, etc., coming in line through the chaos. And this is all brought about by industry here. This is a number that means industry that will influence corporate finances and government to come in line with one world globalistic groupthink by creating crises through new ideas. Think critical race theory. It's not a new idea, but it's old. Think of what they're doing to the world, what they're trying to do. New ideas to create chaos. They want to fund this through governments of the world. And so you have industry, corporate finance, government institutions, and all of a sudden you have over here another number which stresses oversight to a divine path. I won't get into all the meanings here. And then you have them to shape entrepreneurs and the education system, as you can see down here, to do what? To influence the world. So as I look at this and I can see the magic square combine what they would interpret it, how the occult world interprets this makes perfect sense of what they're doing. And the symbols speak volumes of themselves, like I said. Make a fortunate event through education to train and equip people to be good serfs, so they don't have any type of problem becoming good serfs. And you're going to use corporations all working in conjunction and unity and integrity to bring about the enslavement of the world for their own good. Okay, so basically you control the entrepreneurs, you control every one of these things. In order for you to do that, you have digital surveillance over the entire world. With that, I want to jump over to pages 32 and 33, a synthesis statement. But I want you to focus on this picture. This is, again, occult significance. You have a hole in the wall. You have these words here: scenario, system, and crunches. You have debates, toolkits, horizons, leverage, and points. You have all this stuff that this scenario plan talks about, how to leverage everything into an effective way to create controlled chaos in order to bring about a one world government for the world's good. Because people are too stupid to run their own lives. That's their idea. So what do? You break the wall means barriers, and you break it down one brick at a time. How do you break it down in order to reach a new horizon of a utopic world where you own nothing and you're going to be happy about it, you serfs? By the ruling elite. So how do you get there? You do scenario planning. You create systems upon which it works. You create crises, crunches to make it work. How do you bring about that? You bring about through debate with integrity, with one group mindset, and also silence the debate of other people who oppose you. You have a vast toolkit at your disposal in order to bring that back. You always motivate your people to looking at the utopic horizon there of a perfect world, and they are their players and they are the stakeholders in it. How you bring this about? Use corporations and big businesses and economic stress as leverages and points in order to break down the barriers in the wall. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people. Again, the occult world, the number 8 means money, power, manager, supervisor. It means in the occult world, continuous spiral motions. 8 is a number that always assumes power in a chosen field. It involves high finances and financial rewards. It's a thing about who gets where ahead in business. This is all about power and control. Also, the number 8 is associated with death as well, and chaos as well. All done to bring about divine balance. In fact, number 8 on the tarot card system is divine balance, justice. You bring about all this by keeping your focus on the horizon to produce justice to a utopic world of this perfect world where everybody who opposes is the enemy, and under the disguise of love, how much you love humanity, you got to eliminate half of them or more than half in order to reduce the world's population to produce a utopic world. Don't pay attention to the death and chaos that you bring in order to carry it out, because your goals are noble. That's the idea of the number 8. So you have these people planning that. You have crunches, chaos. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bricks. Boy, 7 is, let's see, it is the number for divine victory through an elevated consciousness, through a strict analysis, through, I'm going to read it. 7 seeks answers. It tries to establish a philosophy which is never questioned to this point. 7 looks for friendship with those of an elevated consciousness that can match its own. It's what people do. They think, they plan to produce a utopia. They're thinking about this. You got the World Economic Forum thinking about what's the best way to go to break the wall down so we can have a utopia. Folks, that's what all this is about. So with that, I hope you kind of get an idea where they're headed and where they're taking us, folks, through the scenario plans and through the documentation that they themselves provide. It's a very interesting thing to look at. It's very scary and frightening of what they are doing and what they plan. And what can I say? So how did we get there? Well, we go to the Bible and it kind of tells you how. And I'm going to close with this thought. I'm going to read out of the book of Hosea. And the book prophet Hosea says this. And if you know anything about Hosea, I suggest you read it. But God commands Hosea to take a harlot for a wife. And he was going to show his love, because this is how the nation of Israel in the ancient times treated God. They played harlot with the world system, okay? And listen to what it says in verse 2. Then the Lord began to speak to Hosea. The Lord said to Hosea, go take to yourself a wife of harlotry and the children of harlotry, for the land has committed great harlotry by departing from the Lord. Okay, so where am I going with this? If you read the book of Hosea and you go through and you read it and all that, and you're amazed at it, because the Lord keeps loving his Israel, and he gives the gifts to Israel and blessings. And what does Israel do? Give me the gifts, but I don't want you. Give me the gifts and I don't want you. And this is an incredible story about how God overcomes with love and stuff, and how he gives and pours out his heart, and how Israel just turns against the Lord. Let's modernize that today. This is the state of the modern church world. They want the blessings, but they don't want God. They want give, give, give. We live in a society and world where it's all about me. It says in 2 Timothy chapter 2 there, it talks about perilous times coming. Men will become lovers of themselves, proud, boasters, so forth, etc. We see that in the church. It's all about me. Give me gospel. Give me, give me, give me. We want the blessings, but we don't want the blesser. We don't want God. We want the healings. We want the miracles to make us look big. But we're doing it for God because we love God. No, you're doing it because it's all about you. No wonder Jesus could say at the end times, many will come to me in that day saying, Lord, Lord, have we not done all these great things? He'll say, I depart from me. I never knew you. You never spent any time with me. So we're in this mess because the church has dropped the ball. And so all I'm saying is a call to the church. It's time to get on your face before God and find out where you've been playing games at. Do you really love God or not? I want you to know what the Lord did for us. He came Jesus came to us as a form of a servant, came in the likeness of us. He showed God's goodness. And how did humanity repay him? They put him to death on the cross. And by doing that, the Lord put on him the sin iniquity of us all, and what he hates of sin, our crimes that we commit, he put on Jesus. Jesus paid our debt in full. So Jesus bore us placing our sins on him, and then he bore the sin of the world, and God put him to death in our place for abandoning, neglecting, having these crazy ideas, destroying people's lives, destroying this. We put people on trial. We do all these things in our mind. We justify ourselves. We put burdens on people they can't bear. We created these stupid ideas like the World Economic Forum does about mystery meat, whatever. We're going to create a whole new world. We don't need God. Okay? And so the church world fell for all this stuff. And guess what? Where we're at today. And so we're doing the same thing. We don't want God because we don't see the Lord that he saved me. I'm a wretch. I don't deserve salvation at all. I deserve it none. And yet Jesus exposed our sin and iniquity and died in our place for our sin and iniquity, paying our sin debt in full of death on the cross on our behalf, dying in our place, suffering the wrath of God in our place for our own sin. And you owe him your life. Jesus didn't save us because we're nice people. He saved us because he loved us. And he wants people back to him. And he constantly proves himself. And so in the church world, he gives blessings. And so all of a sudden, the church world says, I want the blessings. I don't need the giver. I just need the blessings to get along in this world. And so just consider thinking, how have you left God? Are you grateful that God saved you? Made you a new creation? Can you live a grateful life and say that, man, the Lord really loved me? I owe you my life. I don't earn salvation. I can't earn it. Nothing I can do. I humbly fall before you and ask you to forgive me for all my abusing your gifts, abusing all you've given me. Can you just fall on your face and ask God that? Maybe if the church world did that and got right again, maybe things might change. I don't know if they will. I know that these people are crazy and they're gunning for this. They have scenario plan after scenario plan after scenario plan in order to carry it out. They do plan for food shortages. Are we seeing that now? I do not know. We might be seeing the stages set for it, and test cases and how to extort money and criminal activity increasing and everything to break down the social order to create enough chaos so a strong dominant male will come on the scene and through the Antichrist and change everything for the world, or it can be delayed if we fall on our face before God as a church as a whole and simply repent. So the choice is yours. So I just want to end that today on today's live stream messages. And you guys be blessed. I hope this makes sense to you. I know it's kind of rambling. But you guys be blessed in Jesus' name.